Stealth here. Map Pack 2 is live for Wargame Red Dragon. You can download it for free, or actually Steam should already be downloading it automatically for you if you have the auto updates enabled. I'm going to do a quick review of all these maps, see what's new, see what has changed, and whether they're any good. The first one that I'm looking at right now is called Punch Bowl. And I was looking at the map and thought, well, this looks familiar. You're looking at Plungeon Valley with remapped sectors. It's a 1v1 map, although I think there are quite a few sectors for a 1v1 map. I think this one would be better served as a 2v2. Possibly even a 3v3, considering the amount of terrain that you have to cover. Now I'm currently playing as Blue 4. I'm going to start in Hotel. The enemy forces, so Red 4 are going to start in Alpha. Normally, you start over here, and the enemy team starts somewhere back there. So they pretty much changed the map 90 degrees, and this does give you some new zones, as well as a lot of redundant terrain. Because all of the terrain here is, as far as I'm concerned, just waste. You can fly over it with a helicopter, you can try to do a heli rush towards this flank and try to push into Alpha that way. It's not easy, it takes up a lot of fuel, so low autonomy helicopters are probably not even going to make it that far. But it is an open route that you can take. Now, Foxtrot and Golf, this is going to be a urban warfare zone. It's not big, there aren't that many zones, there's 5 over here, and then probably balancing wise... Oh, these guys actually have more zones. But probably these buildings are going to obstruct each other's view, so that if you park infantry back there, it's not going to be able to fire at the infantry that's, say, up there. So this is urban, as well as a bit of tree line skirmishing, and I can see infantry, autocannons, maybe some medium tanks operating here. Then you have this road down the middle of the map, or pretty much, sorry, it's not the middle of the map, Bravo's the middle. This is pretty much towards the left flank of the map. If you park some ATGM infantry here, you have a pretty good line of sight, and the same goes for the other side as well. Middle of the map, Bravo, a lot of urban zones. And I would half and half expect there to be one reinforcement zone here. But the way that they have it set up, it's... I don't know, it seems to be out of the battle zone. Because normally, on most maps, you have one reinforcement zone, the other reinforcement zone, and the other sectors are in between. These are much more off to the side. And considering the size of these, it can take you quite a while to actually find the enemy command vehicle. These CVs have a lot of room to hide themselves. A lot of tree lines here, even some buildings, although I wouldn't personally park my command infantry back there if I had the option to put it somewhere closer to a retreat zone. Delta is going to be hard to capture. It would seem that the enemy team, or that the team that starts on, say, the Charlie side or Alpha side of the map has an advantage, because they seem to have at least some cover here in the sense of these woods. Blue 4, not really. There is a little bit of cover here, but good luck parking anything in there without getting spotted. Blue 4 does have a little bit of tree line here, but it's not as big as what Red 4 has. And I think that that might cause problems for teams starting on this side of the map. At the same time, Red 4, and yes, I'm calling it Red 4, but it's pretty much Alpha 4, the team that starts in Alpha, also has the advantage of being able to deploy what I think is faster into Bravo. So what I'm expecting to see is ATGM vehicles or ATGM infantry and helicopters rushing into Bravo, setting up defensive positions. And unless you put up a hell of a smokescreen, it's going to be pretty difficult to push your forces into Bravo. It is very open if you're starting in Hotel. The only real way that I see Blue 4 getting in here is either a helicopter rush, or for example napalming the area in front of, between Alpha and Bravo, so that Bravo's vehicles or Alpha's vehicles are going to take a little bit longer getting there. But as I'm looking at this map, I think that the Alpha team is going to have some significant advantages. Easier deployment in Bravo, more of town blocks or urban sectors in Gulf here, as well as having much more cover in Delta to hold that territory. So, I'm not sure. I I think the enemy team has a bit of an advantage. It might pan out. We'll see as I'm going to be playing these maps, but that could be some while in the future. Okay, I'm going to pause it here and load up the next map. Alright, next map. It has a bit of a funny name. It's called Hell in a Very Small Place. I don't know about their definition of small, but this is just a resectored map or a rezoned map of another D-Day in Paradise. Usually you have urban engagements going on here, you have Red Force starting on that flank, and say Blue Force starting back there. The map is classed as a 1v1, but again I think that this would work better as a 2v2. Aside from that, I don't see that many people playing 1v1 these days. It seems to be much more geared towards 2v2 and bigger. So why they're introducing 1v1 maps, I'm not sure about. Anyway, it is another D-Day in Paradise, but with rezoned sectors, no naval engagements, so you have a huge area of the map over on the right flank that you're not going to use, or at least that I don't really see a reasonable purpose for. I mean, if I wanted to do a helicopter rush from Alpha into, say, Delta, I would fly around this hilltop, or this mountain, whatever you want to call it, and pull back west. This entire area of the map, as far as I'm concerned, could have been cut off. That would have made the map a lot smaller. Anyway, let's have a look at how balanced this thing is. We have Bravo over here on the right, which is, I suppose you could say, pretty balanced. It has, of course, these large forests here that you can park all sorts of infantry and possibly mortars in to support your forces in Foxtrot or Charlie. Blue 4 is going to reach Bravo a lot sooner than Red 4 will, at least in the current setup. Red 4 has to cross 2 bridges and then go across. Blue 4, same 2 bridges, but they're right across the sector. So I think that Blue 4 in this setup is going to be capturing Bravo very quickly. Blue 4 can also push into Echo very quickly. Same goes for Delta or Red 4 into Charlie. So Blue 4 and Red 4 are pretty much balanced in this regard. But Blue 4 can capture Bravo faster than I think Red 4 can capture Gulf. Moreover, it's going to be harder for Red 4 to make it all the way here if Blue 4 manages to push up quickly, deploy infantry, possibly ATGM infantry in here, and lock down this bridge. That means that Blue 4 will have an additional +3 income, and I see that causing a problem. Because 3 points of income are going to be, on the long run, causing a lot of issues for Red 4. Blue 4 can deploy forces faster, and especially can deploy more expensive forces faster, which means a higher tech, more damage output. Foxtrot seems to be in the advantage of Red 4. Blue 4 does not have a lot of cover, and yes, I'm still calling it Blue 4, they're going to come in from the south. This means that Blue 4 has this tree line here, a little bit of cover over here, but I would not park anything other than, say, a sniper team with exceptional stealth over here in this tree line. Red 4, on the other hand, has a lot of cover here in these trees. They can deploy quite a few infantry units, possibly back them up with some tanks from the tree line back there. And that means that Red 4 has the advantage in Foxtrot. Gulf, I see this being a zone where you're going to be using infantry, autocannons, napalm tanks. Pretty much those three. BMPTs would also serve a very, very good purpose here. And of course, using a Buratino or mortars to lock down a specific area or to force infantry to retreat from a town would be an ideal situation here. As far as flanking goes, I think you have the best choice to go across the hilltop or the mountainside here and come back into this zone. So, whichever side you're playing, make sure you have at least some reconnaissance out there or out there, possibly even with, say, an AA infantry unit, because you never know if the enemy team might try to flank around. And having an AA unit nearby to intercept it would be very nice, of course. Other than that, I think this map is served best as a 2v2. You could have one person focusing on Bravo and the other person focusing on Gulf, and then together you take on either a 2-on-1 pushing Gulf, or you try to fight it out in the middle in Foxtrot. I think that's the way that this map is going to be played. Okay, we've got more maps to cover, so I'm going to pause it here and load up the next one. Next map, Wrecks and Rocks. It's a 3v3 map. I gotta say, it reminds me of a map, but I cannot quite get which map it would be. I've been playing the campaigns a lot lately, and I think that it's one of the campaign maps, but I believe that the campaign maps are just adjustments of the standard maps that are in the multiplayer and the skirmish versions. So I'm not sure which map this is. If you know, please let me know in the comments. Anyway, 3v3 map, lots and lots and lots of terrain to cover. If you're using a deck that has a lower autonomy, or at least is more likely to run out of fuel, be careful. Because, for example, the Japanese and the Koreans, and I'm talking about the South Koreans here, so the Blue Dragons deck, its autonomy isn't great. If you would want to move from Delta all the way into Hotel, I think you're going to have fuel issues. So keep in mind that those vehicles can run out of fuel. Same goes for some of the older helicopters that Blue 4 uses. Those things don't always have the best autonomy. So you may be doing a one-way trip with your helos, or you're going to fly in and not really have the fuel to get out as far as you would like to pull back. Anyway, we have two reinforcement zones, both of which combined air and land routes. So losing one of these is not going to cut off your air support. Blue 4 has a lot, the entire map really, not Blue 4 only, a lot of open terrain. It's a very, very desert-like map. But every here and there you can find quite a lot of industrial buildings. You have a very, very large industrial lot over here on the left to the south of Echo. A smaller industrial lot in Charlie, and I think that this one is going to be heavily fought over. If you can put ATGM troops here and there, you have a very commanding view of this sector. Same goes for ATGMs there to lock down that bridge. Those three combined can pretty much determine the outcome of the entire battle in Charlie. Park some AA infantry in these buildings and you have a lot of air cover to make sure that helicopters are not going to kill off the ATGMs. Of course, if you would want to attack this position, use mortars, use smoke, use a Buratino. Airstrikes I wouldn't really recommend, unless you know that you have suppressed or panicked most of the AA that's down here. Over to the right, Blue 4 has another smallish town in front of the position here in Alpha. I wouldn't really recommend putting any infantry in here. I think you're going to see that by less experienced players. Because they may think, oh, I need to defend my reinforcement zone. Let's put some infantry in here. Realistically, what you want to do is push out as far as you can. So I would put my infantry as an ambush position here in Foxtrot. Possibly some ATGM infantry along this tree line. And for the rest I would use tanks and fire support vehicles to cover down these roads. Bravo's pretty open, combining a smallish forest here with a few buildings. There's really only 4 blocks here, so pick wisely what kind of infantry you would like to position there. It is pretty much halfway between Gulf and Alpha, so either team has a decent chance of getting there first. If you really want this position, push in with helicopters. But beware that the enemy forces can still push up from Hotel, take the road into Bravo, and you're only going to see them with your infantry once they are right on top of you. So the ideal position would be infantry here, let's say a bit of recon out there, or possibly using this tree line as a sort of forward position. And then putting some tanks or HGM vehicles in this tree line so you can lock down that bridge and that one. Hotel seems to be a very, very Red 4 oriented zone. You have a lot of tree line that you can use to cover your forces. And pretty much the entire bridge crossing here is covered. This can work to your advantage and your disadvantage. It depends on where the battle is flowing. If it's flowing towards you, it's going to be hard to defend. If you're trying to attack from it, it's going to be not as easy as you might think. But consider that it's a very, very small river. This means that amphibious vehicles can really quickly cross over and you don't have to constrain yourself to only using these bridges. Moreover, you can do the same thing, crossing from Hotel to Charlie. Use some amphibious forces to cross this river. Push from there over to the other side or in reverse, and you have a bit of a foothold in Hotel or in Charlie. So amphibious vehicles are going to be really important on this map. I see them having a lot of potential crossing these rivers at positions where bridges seem to be the only option. Then over on the left we have Echo, which is a very, very large zone. Not sure why they made it this shape, because this extension doesn't really seem to cover or to have a purpose as far as I'm concerned. You may want to park a command tank there in order to neutralize the enemy force's hold on the position, but I don't think it's very safe. You don't have a lot of cover there. The type of units that I would use here, some tanks over there to cover this entire approach. Possibly have a tank here, but keep in mind that there is an incline here. Your tank that's positioned in this tree line is not going to have a good field of fire if something is going to come up this ridge. Only at the last possible moment, when it's already on the ridge line, you can start to fire at it. In reverse, I think that this tree line is better to defend against stuff that's going to go down this road. So having some longer range vehicles here, let's say a Storm or one of the, I think it's the WZ550, that's going to be covering this position with long range ATGMs will be ideal. But keep in mind, again, there's a sharp incline here, which means that an ATGM vehicle that's going to be firing from this position has a reasonably good position to fire at the bridge, reasonably good at the road, but at some point it's going to lose line of sight because it's going to be dipping too low. When that happens, your missile is going to miss. So keep an eye on this position if you have forces in it. India can be defended again with vehicles. You could put some medium tanks in here and some infantry. In Hotel, well, let's hope that Red 4 doesn't really need to retreat back to Hotel, because as mentioned, it can work really badly if you have to defend this bridge crossing. This tree line though is a bit better, and you have a significant town in front of Gulf here. There's a town, there's a large industrial lot, and especially later on in the battle, if Blue 4 manages to push this far, this can be an absolute meat grinder. You can lose so many infantry units in this town fighting man to man there. So if you're playing this map, make sure you have something that can take care of groups of infantry. So think along the lines of either napalm, napalm bombers, napalm troops, maybe napalm tanks if you can get them. But Retinos are going to be ideal in this situation. Juliet, not that eventful. It has a lot of smallish tree lines here. But again, I think that the main defense is going to be focused around India, and that Juliet itself is not that likely to get threatened. I don't really see a lot of opportunity for flanking on this map, so long as you cover most of the terrain. It's not like the previous map that had this very, very large extension to the right of the map, where you could just easily fly around with helicopters. I don't see that happening here. What I would recommend is that you park at least some infantry out there in this tree line to make sure that you have at least a bit of reconnaissance, because if you're going to flank anywhere, I would do it across this map border. Fly around, try and come into the side of Gulf and take care of artillery, FOBs, command vehicles and the likes. The other flank, same deal. Make sure you have a bit of reconnaissance as a stopping force over here in the tree line, possibly over on this mountain side here. Make sure you spot those helos early before they get to your command zone. Okay, that covers this map. On to the next one. Next map, and this one is called 38th Perpendicular. I think that we know this map. I'm not exactly sure what the name is, but Blue 4 usually starts on this flank, Red 4 starts on that flank, and you clash somewhere in the middle. They have again rezoned this map, and the zones are now so that you start on either side of the river. It's a 3v3 map, but I think that by the sheer size of this thing, you could easily make it a 3v3. Sorry, a 4v4 and possibly even a 10v10. It's big enough for that. There is a lot of ground to cover. So again, decks with lower autonomy are going to struggle here. Make sure you have a deck that is going to be suitable for this map, or you may find yourself in trouble. Now, Echo over here is really what it's all about, or at least that seems to be what the devs want to indicate here. It's a huge sector which has very, very little cover, or at least that's the way I look at it. The left flank here on the riverside is completely open. There are some very, very small cover positions. These trees do count as cover, but other than that you have absolutely nothing that you can use to cover this zone. The other side, you have a bit of a tree line here. You have a small building for, let's say, blue 4, because they're going to reach this position first. Red 4 is going to reach this position first and possibly provide fire support from the tree line out there. Red 4 also seems to have this terrain, but don't be mistaken, this is just grassland. This is not a forest that you may be mistaking it for. This is not actual cover. If you would want to capture Echo from this flank, I would push in here with command infantry, try and capture these buildings, use tanks to provide fire support, smoke screen this area and push in with infantry so that I have this area, and then bunny hop over to this block of buildings. It's not going to be easy. You're going to be facing constant reinforcements from the enemy team, which are going to come right down this road, and their reinforcement routes are going to be shorter than yours. Because by the time that you're actually fighting all the way up there, your reinforcement or your supply lines have gotten quite long. If you're fighting on the other flank, you have a bit of cover here, a small town, and Red 4, at least the current way it is, Red 4 has quite a lot of buildings here. This is not going to be an easy zone to capture. It's going to be a meat grinder, you're going to need infantry, napalm, and pretty much everything else that I mentioned previously. It is going to be difficult to cross here. It's if you want to cross this area, if you want to push up from that flank to here, do it across this road or along this road. You have buildings that you can pretty much jump infantry almost the entire way. Look at this. You can start your infantry off here. You offload them. They jump, 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 jump. They cross the road. This counts as another zone. Jump across. And then you can jump all the way here. This is one of the longest infantry bridges that I have seen so far. And this is where you run into trouble. Because now you have to start crossing into this tree line. And this is where there's probably going to be autocannons firing at you, tanks maybe, other infantry. This is going to be difficult. So if you're pushing either way, make sure you have smoke in order to conceal your approach. Charlie, again, a very, very open zone. ATGMs and tanks are going to reign supreme here. Don't underestimate the use of infantry transports here. Infantry fighting vehicles such as BMP-1Ps all the way up to BMDs can be extremely effective with our ATGMs. For Blue 4, think Weasels, or sorry, not Weasels, Bradleys, CV90s, stuff like that can be extremely effective with autocannons and or ATGMs, whatever happens first. Recon is also going to be important to make sure you see what is coming at you, so if you can, park some infantry or some recon infantry along this position, no matter where you begin, whether you're coming in from the north or the south. This position is going to be a very, very nice recon position to get a good overview of this sector. Delta, a few buildings here, not too many. It will be contested, I can guarantee you that much. But I think that the main battle is going to be between Hotel and Delta. So again, this is a very, very heavy infantry zone. This is going to be an infantry warfare zone. This is more likely going to be geared towards tank and vehicle warfare. So if you want to take this left flank, make sure you have high-end or a high amount of infantry, because it's going to get messy. You're going to lose a lot of infantry trying to push across this town into Delta, or from Delta into Hotel. And it seems that Hotel has a slight advantage over here, because if you actually capture these buildings, you can then push right across and jump your infantry all the way through these buildings, across this forest, and then you're really threatening the enemy position. From Delta the other way around, you have to stop here. There is no tree line, there is no building close that you can jump across. So let's say you're playing from Delta and you want to push into Hotel, you're going to run into trouble, because the next line of infantry is going to be in this block, and this line is going to open up on you with everything they have. Especially once you're halfway there, you're going to be facing assault rifles, submachine guns, flamethrowers, whatever they can find. So be very, very careful as you're pushing across there. I recommend smoke screens again. Now over to the right we have Gulf and Foxtrot, and these two zones can be very, very effective for vehicle warfare. So think tanks, ATGMs, helicopters. There's not a lot of cover, so spotting stuff is going to be important, and I don't expect to see large pushes here, although I think it might be interesting to do a cinematic video here with a push of, say, T-34-85s versus M41s, the really old stuff. Other than that, I don't really see a lot of action going to happen here. It's too open, it's too hard to push through. Flanking, Juliet all the way around to Bravo. And the other flank is pretty much locked down, because you're going to be facing a lot of warfare between these zones. Don't underestimate Echo. If you see that there's a lot of conflict going on between Delta and Hotel, and a sort of few skirmishes in Foxtrot and Gulf, you may be able to force your way right across the middle through Echo with a bunch of fast helicopters. If you can make it all the way into Bravo, you can neutralize their land and air reinforcement route, try to capture it for yourself and push across. It'll be very, very hard, don't get me wrong, it'll be hard. But if you can pull it off, you have a very, very good position. Okay, that's for the 38th perpendicular. On to the next map. Okay, I don't think I've ever seen this map before. This map is called Final Meltdown. And I don't know, it reminds me of a map that we used to have in Airland Battle. A little bit, but it seems to be a completely new map. It's a 4v4 map, and it is absolutely enormous. The warning that I gave earlier of vehicles that don't have high autonomy not making it across is going to be guaranteed to be a problem on this map. You're going to absolutely run out of fuel, and not only for vehicles that don't have a lot of autonomy. Blue Force starts in India and Oscar, both contain air and land reinforcements. Red Force starts on the complete opposite side, containing Alpha and Charlie. It's a 4v4 map, but as far as I'm concerned, they could have easily made it a 10v10. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's going to be what it's going to be used for most. There's a lot of command zones. We got, let's see, we got these two basics. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 command zones. 4 of which are already occupied, so we're going to be clashing over 11 command zones. That's a lot of conflict area. But of course, that's not really going to be the case, because the main skirmishes are probably going to be in Kilo, and this is going to be one huge area where infantry is going to slug it out. We're going to possibly see pushes from Foxtrot into Hotel or the other way around, where Hotel has a tree line that it can use to defend with tanks against oncoming vehicles with infantry. And Foxtrot up in the north can defend this town rather easily with infantry, as well as use this tree line to fire back at the tanks or at the vehicles coming across. Gulf, I don't think we're going to see a lot of action in Gulf. Maybe. India to Gulf is going to be crossing this bridge, and then all the way up north, at which time some vehicles may already be out of fuel. Or, if you're feeling lucky, you can push across with helicopters. That's going to be by far the fastest option. Also, don't neglect these islands. If you can deploy infantry reconnaissance here, or possibly float across with amphibious units, it's going to be a hell of a long traverse to go from, say, India to Gulf though. But if you can get across, or just position some AA infantry here, you can lock down this area. Foxtrot, as mentioned, defendable by tanks and infantry. Bravo, I don't see the conflict getting to here anytime soon. Not with 4 people slugging it out here, or possibly 10 per side. Same goes for Delta, nice and contained. We got some nice crop circles on here. I don't think we've ever seen those before. You have a bit of tree line cover here, but it's a very commanding view over the surrounding area. I gotta say, the game still looks very, very nice. Sky map's a bit pixely for me, might be my settings. But the map looks good. And you can see that large reactor in the middle, where it's really going to be slugging it out to get that +6 income. Lima, another bridge, or 2 bridges to cross really. Again, I would use tanks and autocannons to neutralize anything that's going to come at me, or smoke positions if I want to cross from one side to the other. The same goes from this position, although ideally you would be defending from Lima, whichever side you're coming from. Then you have another very large bridge from Charlie to Echo, and this is, and I'm going to zoom out completely, pretty much a mirror of what you're seeing from India to Gulf and Charlie to Echo. I suppose that these things could be pretty heavily mirrored. One thing that I think would make this map better is to introduce rivercraft. I know not everybody likes the naval aspect because it gets spammy, and I completely agree with you. Firing anti-ship missiles until you overwhelm the enemy anti-ship missile defenses is not that interesting to watch. But the naval section does have quite a few river support craft. And I'm not talking about the coasters, I'm talking about the river craft. So think Monitor Zippos, think STRB 70s, or STRB 90s I think. Stuff like that could actually make a very interesting impact. So, the map's unfortunately already released. If I would have my say, I would also make this, or extend Charlie slightly, and make it a naval reinforcement zone. And the same for India. Because it would be absolutely awesome as far as I'm concerned if you could push across, let's say from Hotel into Foxtrot, with Marines and use Monitor Zippos to cover your approach. Or to use STRB 90s to snipe tanks as they're coming across this road in Gulf. Unfortunately, not the case currently. Maybe we can, I don't know, start a forum thread on the Wargame forums and ask them to adjust that. Because I think it would be a very, very nice addition to this map. Because you have this huge river, and we're not really using it to the full of Wargame potential. So in the comments, let me know what you think of that plan. Anyway, that leaves me with just one map to cover, so I'm going to pause it here and load in the new one. The next map is called Son of Yuchi, and you may be thinking, what the hell, did he load in the same map twice? No, I didn't. But the map pretty much contains the exact same zones, but you now start on either side of the river. Blue 4 starts in Lima and Charlie, Red 4 starts in Echo and Gulf. The middle is still very expensive, but currently you're going to be getting 8 income from it instead of only 6, so this thing is even more expensive and interesting to capture. If you want to be the first to arrive, push in with helicopters. Then wait for your grenade launchers and whatever else you can muster in order to reinforce this position. Because if you get that +8 income, you're going to be very, very much profiting from it. Again, it's a 4v4 map. I think 10v10 would work perfectly well on this one. And considering that I already covered most of the battle zones, I'm not going to go over them to great detail. But what you need to know is that you're now no longer really pushing across these bridges. That's not really the main engagement anymore. The engagement is, I suppose you could say, perpendicular. And I think I like the previous map better. Because pushing across those bridges is going to concentrate the conflict zones, but also make it a bit easier to push across. Right now, if I were to say attack from Charlie to Echo, the real options that I have are only across this road. And again, I don't have a lot of cover. So you can use the tree lines, but there's absolutely nothing in the sense of buildings here. Yes, there's this small town, but it's all the way out there. And the tree lines around it are going to make it completely unlikely for ATGMs to do anything useful there. ATGM infantry can be used in Alpha, can be used in Delta to defend against vehicles, but again, a lot of tree line cover, and even these small tree lines will mess up your ATGM line of sight. No line of sight means no kill. Other side, same deal. It's pretty much mirrored. The zones are slightly different in the deployment. Actually, are they really that different? This one has 2 crop circles, this one has 4, this one has 3. This one has 2 crop circles, this one has 3, and this one has 4. They may be slightly differently oriented, but I think they just pretty much copy-pasted from the other side in order to keep it balanced. But as mentioned, I prefer the other side, or the other version, which is called Final Meltdown. Other than the map pack, there have been some other buffs and nerfs, but I won't be extensively covering those, so you can find a link to the patch notes in the description down below. Right now, I'm very interested in hearing what you think of these new maps, especially Son of Yuchi, that I'm looking at now, and Final Meltdown, which is pretty much the same map, but instead of looking at it this way, you're looking at it this way, and pushing across these bridges. Do you think they're nice additions? Do you think Eugen has messed up? What do you think about the river element? My plan to introduce naval riverine craft here? Let me know what you think in the comments, and I look forward to seeing your opinions. Thanks for watching. Hope it was useful. Hope you have a lot of fun with the new maps, and I'll try to upload some new battles as I'm going to be playing these new maps. Thanks for watching. See you next time.